Welcome to the MBD podcast, the show where we dig into what's actually working or not when it comes to scaling businesses with the people who've been there. Today's guest is there, been there, will be there. So why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself, tell them a little bit about what you're doing, where you're going.
You got it. Hey, Jason. Hey, everyone. My name is Josh Zerkel. I lead marketing and community at a company called Gradual, which is an all-in-one community platform. Prior to this, I've led community-led growth programs and go-to-market and marketing in general at companies like Asana, Evernote, HeyGen, Coda. Advised many of these folks on how to build go-to-market motions with community at the core. I'm really passionate about community building. I think it's often misunderstood and definitely underutilized, and I'm happy to chat about how that can tie into marketing and scaling businesses.
Yeah. So when you go into a company and you start working with them, what are you looking for in relation to them building that community? How are you looking? Are they involved in any community? Do they have their own community? What are you looking at, and how would you structure that?
It's a good question. Oftentimes, what I'm looking for first, it takes a few things in order for a community to happen at a company and happen effectively to really make a go to market impact. First, I think there needs to be a moment that they need in order for community to do a thing. So I think they need to think about, like, what is it that we are trying to drive with community? Is it onboarding? Is it expansion? Is it net new leads? Is it retention? Oftentimes, community is this nebulous thing. And so, depending on where you sit within an org, you may think that it's there to do the thing that you need most. But usually, there needs to be a perspective on what community is at a business to do. And that often comes from leadership. The second thing is, I usually look for companies to have found some measure of product market fit. It's very difficult to build a community if people don't actually like your product or service. You can build communities of practice or thought leadership, but if you're really trying to move the needle when it comes to growing your business, people need to like what you do. And if they don't, or they don't yet, it may not be the time for you to really start a community. That doesn't mean you can't cultivate some people that really like your product or service, but really launching into a community program, you're going to want to make sure that there are some advocates there. The final thing that I really look for is leadership bought in on actually doing this community thing? The reason I say that is because community is a really different type of go to market motion. Most leaders that I meet are very used to things that are transactional. We send out an email, there are clicks, then we something happens on the other side. Either people buy, they sign up, they download a white paper or whatever. Community is really different because it's relational, not transactional. And because it's relational, it takes time. It takes time to build the relationships. It takes time to see the results of it. And so I often encourage the companies that I advise to make sure that leadership is bought in a longer term strategy, which for those of us that work in the tech world, long term strategy is like a foreign language. And so I often have to do some educating on what that actually means in practice and how it can sit alongside and feed into shorter term, more transactional strategies as well. But community itself, because it takes time to build relationships, just like in real life with online communities and communities for businesses, it takes time as well.
And
So
how
those are
would you
some of the things I look for.
Yeah, and how would you define? So you have communities. How do you define what's in these communities? Like, would that be like a Facebook group? Was that your own Discord? What do you look at, and how do you engage? Kind of, I see it as kind of like you've got your established communities where, oh, let's do a Discord channel. But then you have, let's go into other communities and maintain relationship within there. Like, say on, Reddit, go in there, look for questions. How do you separate those out, and how do you strategize to attack those?
Yeah, they're really different. So one is a community that you or your brand owns, and one is a community that you don't. So for instance, if you are trying to create a community that is centered around your brand, you want to own the experience, meaning you want to create the space, you want to foster the conversations, you want to create the resources. Most brands will create some sort of online platform, whether it's through Gradual or another tool where there might be forum discussions and events and resources, tools, etc., all under one roof. But then that's not the only place that your customers and your prospects are talking about you. They're probably talking about you in Facebook groups, on LinkedIn, in Reddit threads, on YouTube, depending on the nature of your brand, on other forms of social media. And so you can't ignore those either. You have to really be able to hold both of these things at the same time. So there's the community that you own and nurture, and then there's the community that you want to be aware of and sometimes participate in on the more public forums, the public places like Reddit, etc., you can't control the conversation, just like you can't control people. You
Mm.
can't control the conversations that happen there, but you can chime in when it's helpful. You can make sure that the advocates that are part of your broader community, the one that you own, are aware that conversations are happening in these other places, and you can encourage them to go defend your brand or have conversations there, but you can't force people to do anything. The job of the community builder, and this is often in partnership with the social team, sometimes they're one team, sometimes they're not. The job is to really make sure that you are fostering conversations in the spot that you own and are aware of and participating in the conversations that are in the places that you don't. That looks different from business to business, but every business needs to be aware that these conversations can happen in multiple places.
Interesting. So, how is traditional GTM motions losing effectiveness, and how is CLG changing the game?
Yeah, I think there's a few ways that traditional motions just aren't as working as well as they once did. For like the traditional like advertising motion where we pay to have ads, people don't look at them anymore. They don't care. People are very used to what ads look like. They don't want to be sold. Ads are getting more expensive because of this. And so I think relying solely on this more traditional method, parts of it still work and many parts of it don't. But I think all of us who work in marketing need to recognize that people understand when they're being marketed to, and no one is asking for that anymore. No one is asking for cold outreach from a salesperson. So this sort of advocate based, people who are enthusiastic about your product or service do the selling for you motion, it's just much more germane to how people actually think and buy now. I think to the most recent things that I've bought, I don't generally go to the product's website and ask to talk to a salesperson. First, I'll go to places like G2 or ask my peers and see what other people are saying about it. I'll look for online reviews to help validate some of the things that I'm finding. This is where the power of community led growth really comes into play, is community can touch all of those other surfaces. You may have salespeople that still need to do outreach or AEs that want to have relationships with their customers, but this is a nice add-on to that because it adds that authenticity. So I think that's a big piece of it, is the traditional methods aren't working. What people are often looking for is trusted information from people that they know or other voices online that aren't directly from the company themselves. So community really helps amplify that motion and really supports the broader work of the go-to-market team and sales and marketing in particular.
Yeah, the brand ambassadors have always been a huge point. And like you said, you may even see an ad, but then you're going out, you're doing your due diligence usually to find more of that, right? So if you see that, and also you can continue a discussion that would have been short lived otherwise as well too within these different communities, where you go in and someone has an issue, you go, oh, hey, you know what, this has been fixed, there was an update to software, or hey, try this trick based on what you're doing, and now they've got that, and then someone else comes in there, they see that, because there's a lot of communities that I go into when I'm trying to say fix an issue with adding something onto the truck, where no one even the brand doesn't even know that I looked at what they displayed as an answer that worked to fix whatever problem I had. Um, and that leads into so many things. So, like, how do these outcomes within community, how do they drive acquisition to retention? In that sense.
Yeah, I think smart companies really focus on not just the acquisition, but they recognize that retention is an actual thing that they need to put effort into. And I mean, sadly, a lot of companies just don't think about it. They just focus solely on the top of the funnel. But getting people in is just the first step. Keeping them is a whole other
Mm-hmm.
thing. And that's where the power of community, I think, is actually super effective, because let's say that you offer a product or service, you get people in, you do the hard work of all the marketing and all the sales to get someone signed up, but then you need to keep them. Community can help by educating people through peer networking. They can provide inspiration for other ways, just like what you described, Jason. Like, I didn't even know I could do this, but someone in the community showed me how. That sort of peer education, peer inspiration is incredibly powerful. And then from that space, people who are part of the community and excited, then they go to the places that are external where they talk about your product or service. So really filtering back into the top of funnel. So I like to think of it as a flywheel where you get people into the community, you show them value, they engage, they talk to other people, they get to know more about your product or your service. Then, because they're excited, they go talk to other people, they post their reviews, they share their own templates, they talk about their use cases. And so then the next person that comes in sees those reviews, reads those templates, and then goes into the sales funnel. And so it goes around and around as long as you get the flywheel started and you keep feeding it
Yeah.
useful resources, value, and people really get something out of it. Then that's how it ties back into top of funnel.
Do you have some examples of some successful companies that are, or some companies that have been successful in doing this?
Yeah, there are many. I think smart companies are really figuring out that this is a motion that is worth getting behind. So one that comes to mind right away is Figma. Figma hardly did any advertising or marketing in their early days. They relied solely on the power of community, whether it was through templates that people created, showcases of what people were making with Figma. And they really leaned into like, this is for designers. Designers want to show off what they're doing. The nature of their product really lent itself well to building a very strong community. And so, whereas many communities in the past have been really about support, Figma's has really been about let's create content together. It's a way for people to showcase what they're doing. It's a way for people to learn about what others are doing and be inspired. It's a really powerful growth loop. And so to me, this is a really great example of taking what would just be a design product and instead turning into a community powered growth engine where people are helping each other with adoption, creating evangelists, showcasing all the things that are possible without Figma having to do all of that work themselves. They foster the community, they put effort, energy, and resources into it. They showcase value back to the community, but the community members themselves are the one creating all of this value for the business.
Interesting. So what would be kind of a step-by-step framework to start and grow and measure your own community?
Yeah, I think first it's really figuring out, although community can do many things within an organization, what's the main thing that you or the leadership wants it to do? Is it that you want it to help with onboarding? Is it that you are trying to deflect from support? Is it that you're trying to really grow usage? Define that one thing, knowing that it will have many other ancillary impacts along the way, but having that core of what you're trying to achieve really will help you frame what the community looks like, the types of content that you create for it, the value that you insert into it so that people can get something out of it. So, first is really defining what community is there to do. The second is making sure that there's leadership buy-in, as I mentioned earlier, for not just like, hey, we're going to spit up a Slack channel and see what happens, but recognize, hey, our most important people are going to be part of this community, likely our best customers, the prospects that we want to have know more about our product or service, our evangelists are going to be in there. How are we going to resource this appropriately to create a program that really will recognize that these are important people and build a program that will help match them to what they need for what wherever they're at in their journey. So first is defining what it's for, second is leadership buy-in, and then second is recognizing that you don't have to build everything on day one. You can start with let's create a simple initiative. Maybe it's a series of webinars that are just for community members, or maybe we're going to feature people who are creating things in the community via a series of blog posts, or maybe we're going to start up a chat spot for people to be able to share ideas, whether that's in a forum or in something synchronous like Slack. It's really about, okay, mapping out like you would for any other marketing plan or growth plan, what are we trying to do? Who is this for? And what are the activities that we're going to do to try to get them to do that thing? You don't have to do it all at once. I've seen too many people start community programs where it has every possible activity under the sun, and it gets really overwhelming because you have to manage all of that. So instead, start with just one focused initiative. And then from there, build out how you're going to measure this. Ideally, you decided upfront what the community was there to do. So you would have some KPIs in mind of what you're hoping community will drive, whether it's adoption, retention, pipeline, or so on. Then from the community activities, you would create a metrics plan for how you're going to measure it. The key thing to note is most traditional go to market methods are causative. I send an email, someone clicks, that click leads to a sign up. Community doesn't work quite that way. Because of the relationship built nature of a community program, it's often causative instead of correlative. So you'll often need help first setting a baseline for customers or prospects that don't have any community touch points, and then customers or prospects who do. And then seeing what the delta is between them for whatever it is you're trying to drive, whether that's retention, pipeline, et cetera. That is a really helpful way to say, okay, we can see that communities have any impact in a causative way for each of these different areas that we're trying to measure. That works really well. And so you'll often need resources from data analytics or something like that in order to create the reporting and map that baseline versus delta.
And how do you choose the person that you want to be leading that charge?
That's a good question. How do you choose the person? First, generally speaking, if you have, so it depends on whether you want someone who is an absolute pro or someone who is going to kind of figure it out as they go. And there's no right or wrong answer. If you're trying to create a really robust program from day one, you either want to bring in a consultant or hire someone that has actually built communities, ideally for your segment in the past. And the things that you want to look for are, have they created measurable business impact? The reason why I say that is because oftentimes in the world of community, it can be viewed as a nice to have, or it creates warm fuzzies, or there's pictures of people smiling at an event. All those things are great, but those don't generally move the needle if they haven't been tracked. And so you want someone that understands how to create a business community that produces business results that are measurable. So you can start with a pro who knows how to do that and can help you map out that program. Or maybe you start the other way, very small, with someone on your team who's showing enthusiasm towards community. And you say, we're going to carve out this part of your time to help build out our community. Come up with some ideas, whether it's events or a chat spot or something like that, to help us create some initial experiments. And then you can grow it from there. Both directions work. Personally, I think it's better to bring on someone that's more experienced who can really drive things in a more strategic way, but recognize that not every business is ready to do that.
Yeah, revenue. Like I always like the idea for something like that is you bring in the consultant to essentially create the framework, and then
Mhm.
you can do the grassroots effort to execute. Hopefully, with someone that you can trust, who's already on the
That's right.
team.
And yeah, and depending on the community platform that you choose, they may offer some strategic guidance as well, or you can always
Mm-hmm.
hire a third party consultant.
Yeah,
There aren't a ton of people who are absolute experts in doing this work, but there are some. And finding someone that really understands what you're trying to achieve, the goals that you have in mind, and then helping you shape up and frame a program to match what you're trying to do is really, really important. It just sets you up for better success.
yeah, yeah. And so where you're at now, how are you guys building your pipeline? Are you doing a lot of community to build your pipeline to
Yeah,
build these?
yeah, I work at Gradual, which is a community management platform. I also do my own consulting via the Community Code. At Gradual, we are walking the talk of having community led go to market. So we focused a lot on building out our community program, hosting community events. These are not sales driven events. We actually don't have any salespeople. All of it is via community. And so we're trying to show value first to the people who are our prospects and our customers via community education, how to connect the dots between community and other stakeholders with community at the center to showcase how it can impact different parts of the business. So all of our effort currently is focused on community.
Awesome. And then how do you find other ambassadors within the community or outside to grow the community?
Yeah, it depends on the nature of your product or service. So one of the things that I often look for, I won't use Gradual as an example here. We can use it as an example for something else later. But I think if you have a product or a service that's broadly known or it's starting to gain traction in the minds of your potential target audience, oftentimes there are people who kind of bubble up, whether they're sharing something on social, maybe they're talking about your product at other events that other companies or organizations are hosting. Those are people that are really worth taking note of and getting to know. The reason why is because even though you may not have a formal ambassador program yet, those are people that are worth talking to because you can ask them, like, hey, if we create a community program or an ambassador program, would you be interested in participating? What sorts of things might you want to see in the program that would offer you value, that make you want to participate? What things would you like to do as part of the program that would showcase your value to the rest of the community? That's typically where I start, is finding out who these people are. No matter how small your company might be, hopefully you have some customers that really like you.
Mhm.
And those are the places that you really want to start before you call it an ambassador program with a capital A. Find the people that like what you do, because you'd be surprised at the types of things that they might want to do with you or for you if you show them love, show them attention, and offer to raise them up in the eyes of the broader community. that motivates a lot of people. And so getting to know them is where you find the best first ambassadors.
And knowing what you know now, what would you tell someone who's trying to scale a business?
To scale a business in general is don't try to do everything all at once. And I think honestly, like try to listen to the best business advice that you can, the best domain area advice that you can, but don't listen to everything because it's really easy to get overwhelmed. There's a lot of really great and frankly a lot of less great advice out there. A lot of the clickbait equivalent for business of do this one simple trick and your business will grow. If there was one simple trick, all of our business would be growing
Right? Yeah.
exponentially all of the time. So I would just say be judicious about the types of advice you take in and what you choose to follow. And honestly, I think doing things methodically over time is what usually gets the job.
Do you have any listening tools that you use to try and help find ambassadors or influencers to bring into a
Uh,
community or even
pers-
opportunities to engage in?
yeah, personally, I don't, but there are many tools that you can use for listening where you can set keywords for your business. There's also AEO related tools where you can find out what keywords people are talking about. So I don't have any that I personally use or recommend, but the tools exist and that can be a useful way if you're just trying to get a pulse on what are people saying about my organization, my brand, to give you an idea of what are they talking about and who's doing a lot of the talking.
Hmm.
So that can
Yeah.
be helpful.
Yeah. Awesome. And then if you had a magic wand and you could wave it, what would be something you would magically fix that would help the business?
I wish that more leaders understood the power of community beyond what it was 10 or 20 years ago. What I found is people generally think community is a good idea, but they don't really know what it can do or why it should be doing it. Most organizations in the past have focused on community as a way to deflect from support, and it can do that, but it's super reductive because it can do so much more. And if leadership understands how powerful it can be, then I think all of us across the entirety of our organizations and especially within go to market would have a powerful tool for scaling the work that all of us are doing.
Awesome. And how can people find out about you, where you're at, and what you're doing?
Yeah, so I work at a company called Gradual, gradual.com. We offer an all in one, really powerful community platform. If you're interested in learning more about me, you can find me at thecommunitycode.com where I write about community led growth.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Jason.